Welcome to our webcast on the EdTech opportunities in the Asian market. This is Karen Billings. I'm the VP of Education here at SIIA, and I'd like to be the first to welcome you for this on this at least nice sunny day here in Washington, D.C. We have a number of people, really first a great registration for this webcast, and we have people from many different countries and a lot of international folks who are still at corporate, perhaps in the U.S. But because of the time zone changes and the interest, we are recording it. The audiovisual file presentation slides will be available on our Ed Division homepage, and SIIA has suggested that she's going to be working on it tomorrow and should be available by the end of this week. So when you get the notice that it is available, please feel free to forward it to your colleagues in the company. A couple of other things before we get going. We have a chat feature in the lower left, and some people are already using it, but it is also a great way to pose questions and to talk to the other participants. We also have a few announcements that we'd like to make. We have two more webcasts in July. One is on social media, using social media, and it's a survey that we did with companies in their use of social media. That's on July 13th, and then have a new member web newscast on July 20th. Those are both, I believe, at 2 p.m. and you can register for those on our events page at the SIIA website. We are interested in perhaps having a U.S. software pavilion in BET and Middle East, and also BET London. And Middle East, I believe, is in October, and London is in January of 2012. If you are interested in getting more information and just talking with us about the possibilities of participating, either in terms of just putting your products there or sponsoring or actually being there, do contact SIIA Mapindura. Most of you have gotten email messages from SIIA, but we will make sure that you get her email address later. We have our EdTech Business Forum, and that is always in New York after Thanksgiving. We will be issuing an email shortly asking for steering committee volunteers, sponsors, and speakers. So watch for that, because my assumption is that we're going to have something related to global on that program. And then last but not least, I want to put a plug in for the Global Working Group. This is the working group that started more than a year ago, co-chaired actually by Mimi. And it is a great group of people, and if you're interested in just finding out what the opportunities are globally and what the strategies are for actually leveraging them, this is the group to be part of. So the last thing I'd like to do actually is to introduce Mimi. And Mimi has really helped put this whole panel together. She's now Vice President of Business Development for K-12 Education at Avant Assessment. And I'd like to start off by sort of congratulating Mimi on this new position. She previously had worked as an evangelist for IBM Research, and as most of you know, who've been members for a while, General Manager at NetTrekker. So again, her being on the Education Division Board of Directors, she took on a co-chair position of the Global Strategies Working Group, and she's really helping coordinate our outreach to the international markets, including the series of webcasts. So, Mimi, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Good morning from Iowa, and good afternoon and good evening to our panelists around the world. I'd like to take this time to introduce our three panelists. We're very fortunate today to have great coverage coming all the way from Singapore, South Korea, and North Carolina. So to begin, we have Dr. Durga Aziz, Vice President, Educational Publishing, the International Group at Scholastic, which is the global children's publishing, education, and media company. Durya has spent the last decade or so developing educational programs for Singapore and many other countries for print and digital media. She finds it exciting and inspiring to be in education at a time when new technologies are so significantly changing the way we teach and learn. Good morning, Durya.
Good morning.
Also, we have Trilby Berger, the Vice President for Strategic Partnerships at Metametrics, an educational research organization based in Durham, North Carolina, USA. Metametrics is best known for its Lexile framework for reading. Trilby heads up the company's domestic business development and is also working to expand the organization's reach to international markets, largely focusing on Korea, Japan, Singapore, Philippines, Australia, and Brazil. Good morning, Trilby.
Morning, Mimi, and everyone else. Hi.
Thanks. And we have Jin Yoon, the Senior Manager of Global Business Strategy at Cheongdam Learning, Inc. in South Korea. Jin Yoon is responsible for all Cheongdam's partnerships outside South Korea, and he also manages the following areas: the TOEFL Junior Test Administration, English Bean, Mobile English Learning Application with SKT, which is SK Telecom, the biggest mobile carrier in Korea. Good morning, or good evening, Jin.
Good evening, Mimi.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a fine group of panelists this morning. We are, as you know, going to be talking about the Asia marketplace. The marketplace is quite different than some of the markets that we are used to, or those domestic software developers are used to working in. And we thought that by bringing these fine panelists together this morning, we could attack this marketplace and discuss some of the unique characteristics, some of the key elements, curriculum, technology, and systems. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the very first question. What exactly does the landscape look like for educational technology products and services? Durya?
Hi. First of all, thank you for inviting me to participate in this webcast. I'd like to start by giving you a bit of information about Singapore. Singapore has one of the highest internet penetration rates in the world, with more than 1.4 million residential households subscribing to broadband internet. This may not seem like a lot in many parts of the world, but we have essentially a population base of only 5 million. As a result, Singapore students are digital natives, having grown up with access to technology and are familiar with the power of online collaboration. Those born in the new millennium expect technology to be in everything they do, and education is no different. As I've mentioned on the slide, we've got some of the top companies in the world present in Singapore, and so in many ways access to the best and best-in-class is the norm in Singapore. As far as education technology products and services is concerned, there's plenty happening in Singapore. Singapore launched its first master plan for ICT in education in 1997. Currently, the third master plan is in effect, which spans 2009 to 2014, and it represents a continuum of the vision for the first and second master plans. The four main strategies in this master plan really involve bringing ICT into the core of the education process, improving teachers' ICT skills, improving the sharing of best practices among educators, and upgrading schools' information communication technology infrastructure to keep up with developments. So as part of this master plan, bandwidth at schools has been increased to 1 gigabit per second, which is in line with Singapore's Intelligent Nation 2015 master plan. Another interesting happening on the education scene last year was that the Ministry of Education approved 3 LMS providers, learning management system providers, for Singapore schools for the next 2 years. And this was with a view to making available standardized specifications. So the learning management systems are now have at least a basic conformity that they need to meet. And then another thing that I'd like to talk about is the Future Schools project, which has been launched in Singapore. There's currently about 6 schools on this project, and these schools serve as peaks of excellence in an ability-driven education paradigm. So they not only enhance the diversity of educational offerings, but they also go into very innovative and new ways of integrating interactive digital media into the classroom. What it means for technology providers is that it provides an opportunity for companies to test bed and try out new ideas and reference sites, and these provide reference sites for potential export and commercialization possibilities. Over to you, Mimi.
Great. Thank you so much, Durya. And Jin, could you address the same question? What does the landscape look like for educational technology products and services in Korea?
Okay. Well, hello everyone. This is Jin. I'd like to actually touch down a little market overview about the Korea, because most of you are not really familiar about the school program and curriculum. Korea does have very significant schools up until middle school because it's a government-funded one, and currently the Korean schools in elementary school, they start English classes in grade 3, but in all the private schools they start the English class from grade 1, and so there is a high tendency of the parents that they actually send their kids to the English education kindergarten, which is fully private and is a very expensive one. And interestingly, the high school students are not really paying a lot of attention to English education due to the university and college entrance exam. And up until middle school, they spend a lot of time for the subjects of English as well as mathematics. But if they actually go into high school, they have to actually cover every single subject and prepare for the national, exam. So the kind of heap of the English education is probably end up at the middle school stage. And after high school, they can actually choose to go to either college or university. But as you can see on this slide, the percentage of the university is much higher than college. Okay, as I said, in Korea there are 4 major English education players. It's all private. Cheongdam is the market leader, which has over 60,000 enrolled students and over 144 nationwide learning center. And other 3 players, they do have a smaller portion. However, in each player, they do have such a characteristics, saying like Cheongdam does have all foreign instructors, foreign teachers, whereas JLS and other players, they do have bilingual and native speakers. So the difference between the Cheongdam and other players are especially the teachers. Okay. Okay, going on to next slide. These 2 graphs actually showing that the expenditure on the private education, especially on the English, and the right graph actually shows the CAGR of their private English education market size. The CAGR is over 10%, and regardless of the economic downturn, the expenditure on the private education is increasing. Okay, going on to the next page. Okay. Korean government has actually announced to develop 3 different types of national English proficiency tests. As far as I know, there are same English national English proficiency test in Japan and China. It's called ACAN and Yeongum, and the Korean government has decided to develop such a national English proficiency test to replace the current university entrance exam. And it's interestingly, it's all been developed in internet-based test, very similar to TOEFL IBT. And the test itself has been developed pretty much, yet a lot of raters and test developers are they have to actually recruit them and educate them. So I see some market opportunity for the technology providers. If you have such a technology to actually foster the rater or test developer, then in Korea there is a high chance. And the government is putting a lot of resources and funds to set up proper IBT internet-based test centers nationwide. And up until 2013, there'll be over thousands of IBT test centers, all funded by government. Okay.
Thank you, Jin. So just to recap, you did say that even though there is an economic downturn, that investment in education and especially in private schools is on the rise in Korea. Is that right?
Yep.
And also a question on the IBT test centers. Does this alleviate the need for one-to-one computing in Korea, or is one-to-one already achieved? Do most students have their own laptop?
No, average level in each school has about 60 labs. 60 computers. So the government are, developing kind of over 100 available computers in each school.
Okay, great. Thank you. Trilby, can you give us an overview of the regions that you travel to?
Yes, sure, Mimi. In general, as Duria and Jen have both indicated in their answers to this question, in Asia's region, English language learning market is really, really strong and growing. A couple of points I've made here on the slides. In Korea, for example, they are the largest spending country for English education. And there are a few government-sponsored tests of English either already being used there or under development. And that government-sponsored test development seems to be happening in several other countries in the Asian region also. Another thing I think to know about Korea, this has been interesting for me to learn in my travels there, the parent engagement there is just incredibly strong, particularly mothers and their engagement in their kids' education. Household spending on education is very high. We have a well-established partner in Korea that gave us this one anecdote that I found fascinating, that they know of a family that spends 70% of their household income on their kids' general education. I just found that amazing. It's a real different way of thinking. So exploring the parent market, if you have a product that suits that, is really worth taking a crack at. A note I wanted to make on Singapore is the Ministry of Education there has recently established an English Language Institute, and I put the link on the slide here, which, by the way, these slides will be provided on the SIIA website after this event. But so you may be interested to go there and read more about that. And a note I wanted to make on China, while of course the English language learning market is very strong there as well also, and certainly the size of the market is incredibly enticing. But protection of IP is a real concern. We've heard, our company has heard many, many horror stories about copyright violation issues there, and it's really something to be very cautious about if you're looking at China. Our company is approaching that market with great caution, and probably the way we will consider going in is with a very well-established partner in the market. Another thing I wanted to share on the landscape here is this list of conferences and resource organizations that I thought the group might find useful. These are ones that my company has explored and or attended and found to be very reputable. And some of these links here also, if you'll go to those later, you'll find that there are a lot of exhibitor lists there and other organizations that you might find useful. You see I've separated them out here into English language learning focused, parent buyer focused, publisher focused, and the one that I wanted to make a couple of additional comments on was the EdTech focused conference there, the ICTLT, which is held in Singapore biannually, and the next one is coming up March 29th and 30th in 2012. And as our global working group, I am a member of that with SIIA, we are considering putting together a trade mission for interested members to go and attend that conference. So if you're interested, I would say be sure to reach out to SIIA and or Karen and let them know. I attended this conference in 2009 and just found it incredibly useful. It's a small conference. I would say maybe there are 2,000-ish participants there, but very focused on the Asia EdTech market. They have a great networking session, which makes it very easy to interact and mingle with the Ministry of Education, other partners. I can't recommend it enough. That's it, Mimi.
Great. Thank you, Trilby. And thank you for mentioning our trade missions. I'd like to reiterate that as the Global Strategies Working Group tries very hard to increase our international opportunities, both for international companies coming into the U.S. and for our own U.S. members reaching abroad. We are putting together these trade missions, which basically are groups of us going out to the trade shows. So the one in Singapore, I believe in March of 2012. We're also going to BET in London in January. Please pay attention to these, to everyone out on the call, because this is a great way to get some exposure in a new market and not feel like you're going it alone. Okay, our next question to Duria is, how do purchasing systems work for educational technology products and services, and how can companies outside of the region gain entry?
Well, the vast majority of schools and educational institutions in Singapore are government-owned, government-run, so you have to go through the government purchase process. And this can happen in a couple of ways. If there is a larger scale or nationwide initiative or implementation, then there will be a Ministry of Education tender, and authorized vendors will be invited to participate. Now, you have to be authorized in order to participate in a Ministry of Education tender. The other way of doing it is that schools have budgets. They have individual budgets, and they can make the purchase from their own local budget. But you would still need to go through the portal, the ministry portal, in order to sell to the school. So in either circumstance, you have to be registered with the Ministry of Education / Government of Singapore as an authorized vendor. And to answer the question about how can companies outside the region gain entry, but I think there's a few ways. One is if you're taking a long-term view of the Singapore market, then you should establish a dedicated sales team and go through the registration process, etc. Or you could work with a local intermediary. I have to say that given the fact that Singapore is it's kind of like the apple of everyone's eye, and in some ways spoiled because there's so many good companies in Singapore. So there's huge expectation of customer support in a fairly mature market, and this any company that wants to participate in the Singapore market needs to factor this aspect into its cost and pricing.
Excellent. Thank you, Durya. Jin, can you respond to the question, how do purchasing systems work for educational technology products and services, and how can companies outside the region gain entry?
Okay. Overall, the circumstance is very similar to Singapore. For the public schools, they have very limited budgets, so I don't think that they are I don't think they can actually afford other systems or technologies. Whereas the international schools or private schools does have a great fund and the great support from parents. So they actually tend to apply some new systems and new technologies. But you have to remember that in Korea, the users and students are not really used to pay the kind of subscription charged per use. It's got to be unlimited use per month. For example, the writing solution called Criterion from ETS, they have recently changed the charging system from the limited use subscription per submission. I mean, they have to charge it per submission, but they have changed it onto unlimited use for a certain period. So you have to actually consider the pricing strategy if you actually want to gain some good entry.
Excellent. Okay, and Trilby, can you address the second half of that question? I know that you have such great insights on gaining entry into new regions.
Well, for us, Mimi, I think what's really been helpful to us are existing partnerships that we have in the U.S. and finding that many of those partners are already operating in this region, and so we've been able to go in and collaborate on efforts with existing partners. And the other thing I would add, which I actually have in a bullet point at a later slide, is that I've used the SIIA membership network quite a bit, again, to find other people who have partners or connections or know someone in the region. That's been really helpful to me.
Excellent. Okay. All right, well, let's go on to question 3. And for some reason, it has disappeared from our slides. But the question is, what are the government spending trends and which technologies are gaining traction in schools? Durya?
Well, Singapore has always prioritized education, and through its master plans, it has prioritized the use of technology in education. To give you an indication of the scope of the master plans, the budget in education, the budget for the first master plan, which was a 6-year plan, so the total budget for ICT was $2 billion, that's Singapore dollars, which works out annually to about $650 per student or $1 million per school. The budget for the ICT Master Plan 2, which was a 4-year plan, was about $600 million, which works out to annually to about $300 per student or about $500,000 per school. So Singapore really does believe in the use of technology in education. It's kind of pioneering it, and lots of opportunities for innovative uses of technology. Given that our schools have excellent broadband access, we've moved from the CD-ROM-based information transfer to largely online technology with mobile devices gaining traction. We're working towards a ratio of 1 laptop per student in the next couple of years. Tablets are very popular. iPads are being trialed in several schools. And the 1:1 ratio seems very achievable probably in the next couple of years, particularly as cloud computing is gaining traction in Singapore.
Wow, that's very exciting. Jin, can you respond to that question, the government spending trends and technologies gaining traction?
Okay. Currently, Korea government is spending a lot of money to actually educate and fostering the human readers and the test developers. They are all coming from middle school English teachers. There are about 3 phases for them to be as a human reader or test developer. They actually educate them with the native speakers, and they send those middle school teachers to abroad over 100 days, and they actually assign a certain institution to teach them intensively. So that's actually one of the great expenditure from the government side. And other technology is very interesting one, as Julia mentioned. Some private education companies, they have actually developed a couple of new technologies, very interactive one using the iPad or Samsung Galaxy Tab. Cheongdam has actually developed, along with SK Telecom, that they have developed some interactive English language learning program called SLAP, and the mobile carrier, they are going to launch it within 2 months. And that device learning, we call it device learning, will be actually penetrated onto the private schools very soon.
Fabulous. Okay. Let's move on to the next question then, and that is, which technologies are seeing a decline in usage, and what opportunities should ed tech companies focus on in the current and coming periods? Durya, can you start us off on this one?
Sure. Before I answer that, I'd just like to go back to question number 2 about how companies outside the region can gain entry. And I just wanted to refer to the point that I made in the answer to the first question about that Singapore had learning management systems that were now being that were part of a tender process. And one of the ways that companies can gain entry into Singapore is by collaborating with one of these 3 companies. So essentially using a reseller kind of model where these companies will operate almost as malls to flow your content through. And now to go back to the question that we're actually answering. Technologies, if you're looking at what technologies EdTech companies should focus on, my advice would be that technologies enabling collaborative learning. These are the ones that are increasingly sought after, particularly with the proliferation of social networking tools. Teachers who use such tools face the challenge of having to access multiple tools and systems to evaluate students' learning patterns. They also need tools to provide an aggregated view of students' data for the analysis of learning patterns and progression. So a lot of things to actually, tools that will not only help the students learn, but will help the teachers to understand how this is happening and to be able to facilitate and guide the process of collaborative learning better. The other technology that Singapore is looking out for is learning on the move, because one of the buzzwords or slogans, as it were, is learning anytime, anywhere. And so teachers often face the challenge of engaging students in authentic environments beyond the classroom. One feels that technology often chains one to the classroom because you're using devices in the classroom all of the time. So ICT tools that enable teachers to create interactive learning trails, for example, if you went to the rainforest or to the museum, and how would you use an intuitive kind of technology to facilitate and scaffold the learning process on the move. So those technologies are being sought after as well.
Great. Thank you. Jin, can you tell us about the technologies on decline and upswing in Korea?
Yeah, in the past, the listening and reading technology was very popular in Korea. So not the interactive, videos such as giving them just one-way lecture was very popular. And those companies who actually provide such a kind of online lecture, they have made a lot of money. But since the Korean government has announced the National English Ability Test will be released within 2 years, the speaking and writing section is been very, it's very important, and all the schools and parents are in need of those technologies. So if the company has ability to actually provide such a technology with speaking and writing, especially the Korean, people will actually, they will love it. And the current, those major 4 players in private education market in English, they all have the online speaking and writing system in-house. So I think, listening and reading is kind of such a certainly in decline, whereas the speaking and writing technology, we are such in need of that.
Great, thank you. And Trilby, what can you add to this important question?
Well, to the latter end of the question, I think that ed tech companies are wise to focus on products that support an English language learner market. Again, it's just such great growth in that space. And also probably a place to focus on if you have an existing product that may translate well, translate in quotes, into an Asian market, is you may need to look at localizing. Localizing the product. I saw that came up in the chat. I've seen it actually done both ways, where some companies have just taken their products in as is, and others have translated into the native language, the navigational and instructional directions for the product. So I've seen it work both ways, but certainly localizing it is something that should be explored. I thought another take I would add to this question is realizing that there may be a lot of people on listening in here that really haven't even begun to have experiences in the Asia market. And I just wanted to offer a few tips, and these are things that I've learned along the way dealing in Asia. It is culturally different, and I realize that's an obvious statement, and you don't have to be an expert going in, but a bit of effort our company has found has really gone a long way. Learning a few key phrases, understanding the greetings protocols, the introduction protocols. It really is valued. So I can't stress doing a little exploration on that enough. I made a note here on this slide about an article I had found in USA Today a few years ago. Actually, I think it's a 2007 article, but it'll really get the wheels turning about ways to think about working with and operating in other countries. In the Asian market, I think it's an important tip is to understand that business gift giving is traditional protocol, and so you might want to do a little reading about that. And translating your business cards into whatever the native foreign language is. We've just gotten great response to that, particularly in Korea and Japan. It seems to be just a nice courtesy. Also, I mentioned before, using the SIIA network as a result. There are lots of us already operating in other parts of the world, and I'm sure any of us are very open to having our brains picked. Localizing the product I mentioned previously. And the U.S. embassies in these countries, we have found to just be a great resource. I know on a recent visit to Korea, the president of our company and I went to the U.S. Embassy in Seoul, and boy, they were a wealth of information. They gave us a lot of contacts, told us a lot about conferences, the market. It was really fascinating, and I'm going to make sure to add that to any new countries I visit in the future. And then a PR firm. We have decided to use a PR firm in Korea, and we're exploring one now in Japan, and realizing that's it's an extra expense, but we've found it very, very valuable navigating the media. So just a few tips I hope you might be able to use.
Great. Thank you so much, Trilby. Appreciate it. All right. Well, we are at 1/4 till the hour, so let's break to Q&A. We've had quite a few questions come across from the participants. A reminder, everyone on the call, you should have a chat window, so feel free to send us your questions, and we'll try to get to all of them. One question came up about localization, and this is something that I'd love to hear each of you address if possible, and that is localizing English. We're talking about English-speaking countries such as Singapore or English language learners in Korea. What is the English that is considered local? Is it U.S. English? Is it the Queen's English from Great Britain? Or is it another version? Does Singapore have its own dialect of English?
Singapore does have its own dialect of English. It's called Singlish, but that's not the one that we promote in schools. So we won't be seeing that in educational technology programs or software anytime soon. What we use in education is what is known as Standard International English, and the requirement is that it be coherent, it be understandable, etc. There isn't, traditionally being a former colony of Britain, the British English system is formally adopted in schools, but American English is acceptable as well. We hear a variety of accents all the time, and all of them are acceptable. It isn't so much really which English that Singapore is very particular about. It's more what values get promoted through the programs that the Singapore government and teachers and generally the education community is more particular about.
Great. And Jim?
Yeah, it's actually American English has been, we prefer that, and most of the majority of the schools, they actually consider that American English is the proper one. But since the ETS has provided such a test with various accents, including British and Indian accent, some schools are kind of consider that as long as their communication, their pronunciation is correct, the accent, it doesn't really matter. So
okay.
It's kind of changing.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Here is a question from Christine. It just disappeared. Hang on. So Christine would like to know about the needs and use of ICT for learners identified as special education. Are these students in the same schools, or are they segregated in some ways? And are there specific budgets, as in the U.S., to support special education in language learning? Jin, can you take that?
Yeah, it's actually, Korea is a very wide country like Singapore, so they have kind of limited access at home. At school, but they can actually access to internet at home, and the older private ESL institutes does have English language lab. So I think the accessibility is not a problem.
Okay, great. All right, the next question comes from Sean. How is student performance data collection and reporting used? And How is student performance data collection reported and used to guide education?
In Singapore, data on a year-on-year level is collected locally in each school, and the school will use that to drive its decision-making. There's also 3 benchmark exams, national exams, in grade 6, in grade 10 and 12. And the results of these exams are then used to drive essentially policies with regard to teaching, etc. So, and then of course, in recent years, we've also seen the results of TIMSS and PISA playing an important role in making decisions with regard to education performance and driving policy matters.
Okay. And Jin, in Korea?
I'm not fully aware of that field.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's not a big data collection movement, or the government doesn't require a lot of testing and reporting.
Yeah.
Okay.
A bit of a related note. It has been interesting how closely many of these countries seem to be following the progress of the U.S. Common Core Standards adoption. So just as a side note.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you, Trilby. All right. So one final question here from Christopher. With English language content, how valuable are subtitles in the local language?
Not at all in Singapore.
Not at all. Okay.
Not at all in Korea.
And Korea?
Not at all.
Sorry?
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Okay. Good. Okay. Well, actually, Bruce just popped up with one final question. I think we can fit it in. And Bruce asks about science. He says, what about science instruction? The U.S. spends a lot of energy on math reading, the STEM approach basically, less so on science. Is there a trend to emphasize science instruction in Asia?
Well, speaking for Singapore, Singapore has consistently topped the TIMSS study, the Trends in Math and Science, Trends in International Math and Science Survey, for I think the last 3 or 4 studies. In Singapore, science is highly prioritized. Science education is. Simply one of the reasons being that it plays an important role in the economy of Singapore. So we need to make sure that we have a population of students that is capable of participating in the economy. So with aerospace engineering, nanotech, etc., life sciences featuring largely in our economic sectors, critical to have a high quality of science education.
Okay. And Jin, in Korea,
yeah,
are the schools that you work with? Okay.
Yeah, the government has actually decreased the national university entrance exam subjects, and the science subject has been decreased. So the top priority subject is English, that's for sure.
Okay, excellent. All right, and Tasiwa has just forwarded me a question from Anil. Apart from attending conferences, what is the best way to find local EdTech resellers in Asia? Any of you? Trilby,
well, one of the things I would say again, I mean, it isn't really something that our company has gotten into to date, but I would say again, Anil, the the folks in our EdNet and SIIA and those communities that are already doing business probably are a wealth of information for that. And I have a few ideas of folks I could connect you with. Anil, if you want to email me after this.
And this is Karen. Trilby and Mimi, it sounds like perhaps the Global Working Group should make our, what we've been referring to as an Angie's List, a priority for development, because I do think, particularly the interest in all the countries we've had so far, that this could be a very valuable resource for our members.
Good. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Karen. That's true. So for just to expand on that a little bit, what we are doing in Global Strategies is creating a directory for SIA members, similar to Angie's List, where members can post recommendations, referrals on companies exporting and importing to the U.S. So that our goal is to have that ready by the EdTech Business Forum at the end of November. So we'll be working on that and making announcements. Okay, we are out of time, so I'm going to turn it over to Karen now and have our closing announcements.
All right, thank you. A couple things. We will, as always, send you a very, very, very short webcast survey so that we can get a sense of the value of this. And another suggestion in terms of joining our Global Working Group, again, you could email me, or to SIIA actually is preferred because she works with Global quite frequently. Also, a lot of you were asking about resources for various countries. I wanted to point out, even though many of you aren't specifically in the higher ed market, that right now, like as soon as, well, while I'm talking, you can go to the SIIA website. Go to SIIA.net/eStore, and you can download a document called The Expert's Guide to the Post-Secondary Market. I recommend that you, it's free to members, so you can download free. It's right on the top, I think, of the eStore with the education folks. And there are 2 articles in there about the global market. One is in Chapter 2 about the business strategies. It has to do with global business strategies in 4 of the markets that we have worked on so far, Canada, Australia, the UK, and the Middle East. And then in Chapter 4, the marketing chapter, there's one on global marketing by Megan Stewart from Adobe. And she has some great checklists about product relevancy for a region, the purchasing process, the need for localization or not, etc. So you can, actually, if you download the document, you can just use those 2 chapters, I think, as a guideline for some more discussions within your company. Because a lot of the things, even though they are for the post-secondary market, are applicable for K-12 as well. So again, I would just like to thank you for participating in the session today, and to sign up for the next global webcast. When it comes to pass, we'll make sure that you know about it. Thank you.